following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio streaming and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This week, I'm doing a version of the presentation I gave up at the link at the Finding a Way event up in Sutton. It was a great time. And I want to talk about getting into some basics of better mental health that are simple. They're just not easy. Now, part of the reason I started doing this show is because mental health reporting was driving me bad crazy. Every time I read an article, it seemed to completely change eat this for better mental health. Don't eat this for better mental health. Coffee's good for you. Coffee's bad for you. That's not the way it really works. Single dietary changes, while they may help, too much caffeine is not great for the jitters, right? Common sense. But the fundamental stuff, the way our brains work, the way human behavior works, has been so complicated by the quick fix pseudoscience that doesn't come from the papers. They filter down through headlines and through headlines on headlines. And I've seen it happen. Researching episodes of this program. And it all comes down to things like neurotransmitters and all that, seeming, science and complicated to understand. And so they try to break down things in a way that is so reductive that it actually ends up being wrong. And, we know about serotonin in mental health because, antidepressants, the pills you take, target the neurotransmitters serotonin, which is one of what I'll call a happy hormone, and norepinephrine, which is a stress hormone. But there are other hormones at play that are equally important to our mental health. And the idea that you can eat food or take pills and that's it, it's just not the way it works long term. Pills are lifesavers for people. I thoroughly recommend, if people think that an antidepressant is going to help them, please, as somebody who's drug resistant, if you can take it, take whatever advantage you can. You don't have to be on them forever. But our behaviors, the process of top 10 phrase, don't like problems that aren't your fault, lead to mistakes which are, that's really what gets us to better mental health. And it sounds so simple, but we have to get over the stigma of admitting there's a problem. And while I was giving my talk, I came up with this phrase on the spot that I like, so I'm going to share with it. We spend so much time, we are so trained by society to think when we're anticipating something about all the things that could go wrong, that we neglect the things we know will go right. And the example I gave was, you're going to a social event because a friend has invited you. And I start thinking, what if someone says something mean? Or what if I'm not welcome? Or, just what if that default mode network is going bonkers? And I've learned to stop myself and go, you're going to see this friend. You are going to go and you are going to see this friend. This is what you can control. Top 10 phrase, healthy goals are based on things you can control. There's no need to be perfect. So what? You say something ridiculous to somebody. People do it all the time. But those little, miscalculations in social circumstances, I honestly think that they are ultimately to our benefit, because we show the people who are, it shows the people who are looking to judge us instead of the people who are looking to accept us. And again, that's just fact. Top 10 phrase, self-esteem cannot exist without self-compassion. And I say ignoring negatives isn't being positive as well. And that's true. throwing yourself into a situation that gets you a bad result again and again and again, that is not conducive to our mental health. That produces too much stress hormone. And, norepinephrine is the one that's controlled by certain antidepressants, SNRIs. But there's also adrenaline, that things that makes your heart race and your breathing increase and makes you shake, right? Cortisol, it increases your blood sugar levels. Again, we talk about cortisol. There's some role in stress when someone is pregnant that can affect the brain chemistry. Possibly, there's data to show that it affects the brain chemistry of, the person that's growing in there, right? And all of this matters. And yet our entire society is about toughing through stress instead of going, feelings or feedback. This stress I'm feeling, what is it telling me? How can I adapt so that I'm not just engaging in my distress tolerance skill? I'm working on my mindfulness. I'm going good crazy, as I like to say, your crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you, instead of doing the bad crazy thing again and again and again. And our approach is very, very important. But this focus on chemicals, this focus on brain chemicals, it's not even reported correctly, right? Dopamine, for instance. We hear about dopamine all the time, as well as serotonin. But dopamine is shorthanded as the reward hormone. And it's true, but it's not true, because we don't maximize dopamine by an unexpected reward. Somebody coming up to us and handing us, $1,000. Do you feel like super excited? You're sort of apprehensive as well. Like, what is this? But if you work to earn $1,000, that feels a lot better, doesn't it? Because it's earned. You could call dopamine the anticipation and reward hormone. And all of a sudden, we start to understand why goal setting, those healthy goals based on things that you can control, boosts mental health. Because we get into a dopamine cycle of anticipation, reward, as opposed to reward, which is what we see in, not good hedonistic behaviors with diminishing returns. It's anticipation, reward. Anticipation, reward. And you can use that. If you know there's something you're really not looking forward to, for instance, schedule something for after that is pleasant, and don't not do it because the bad thing went bad. Do the reward activity that you were looking forward to no matter what. After the rough stuff, I guarantee you it will make the rough stuff feel a little less rough. And the more you do it, the more truly resilient you become, because you're training your brain to go, okay, bad things happen, but then good things come around too. So, watch the food rewards, watch the booze rewards. I love the Golden Girls, but cheesecake is not a solution to everything. The cheesecake isn't the point. It's sitting around together eating cheesecake, right? That's where we get into oxytocin. Now, this is another one. It's called the bonding hormone, the love hormone. But the love hormone, I wish they would stop calling it that, because oxytocin does not make you fall in love with people. It just doesn't. What oxytocin does is it reinforces those social bonds we build with people. And wow, is our society lacking that? Things like group exercise. Exercise is good for everything. We'll talk about exercise in a bit. But things you do in groups, group exercise, group singing, hugging, petting your animals. Don't go up and hug random people, please. This is why I'm careful about that. I have heard far too often and you get into places like the manosphere, you hear a lot of sex is a need because it produces oxytocin, right? No. We need companionship. We need a sense of belonging. Sex is a nice to have. And when you get into these need, must, should, just saying those words gives me a little bit of a stress spike. I need to cook dinner. I need to do laundry. I need to finish the show, right? When I talked about this on the weekend, you saw people's bodies slump, right? When we started talking about needs, should, have to. And you go, wouldn't it be nice to have really great food? Wouldn't it be nice to have clean clothes and I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the week? The minute you go, wouldn't it be nice? The minute you go from have to want to, all of a sudden you start getting that anticipation, which starts the dopamine cycle because this is within our grasp, right? So oxytocin, this idea that people must provide something to you because brain chemicals say so. Guess what? That doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. It does the opposite. It creates those, stress hormones, which are what we're trying to avoid. We get plenty of those on a daily basis. Although that's not true. People who do nothing and never are constantly staying in the proverbial cave, never venturing out, and doing that little bit of stressor, those healthy stressors, that's not good either. But getting back to this idea of bonding, of this human need that we can only control one side of. I'm going to go to a break and then we're going to come back and talk about how you can boost oxytocin all on your own. It's a mental health strategy that is proven effective, but is not well explained. So after this, questions, comments, do you have a story you think would be good for the show? Are you interested in sponsoring the show? Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website. At nottherapyshow on socials. Mental health. It's simple, but it's not easy. When we come back on It's Not Therapy, talking about oxytocin, the bonding hormone. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We're still talking better mental health. It's simple, even though it might not be easy. And this is inspired again by the wonderful time I had on the weekend at the Finding a Way event in Sutton. It was a neat little thing, really cool. You'll be hearing some guests that I met at the event in the coming weeks. But right now, I'm repurposing the talk I gave at that event because it seemed to go well. And I'm like, this is something I could share more broadly. So, hey, it's an easy show, right? Nothing wrong with doing easy as long as it's productive, right? So I was saying before the break about the sort of dicey stuff we get into when we talk about the happy hormone oxytocin, misrepresented as the love hormone, more accurately described as the bonding hormone. Now, the reason this one's dicey is it is the hormone that is released after sex to greater and lesser degrees in different people. But it's not about the physical, even though that is a part of bonding. Some people touch is more important to for others. But it is that social bond that is so important, that sense of belonging that human beings need. And we talk, there's been a lot in the press about, COVID was so bad for us. But we started seeing social bonds decline before COVID. We started getting warning signs in the data around 2015 that something was going extremely awry. That was almost 5 years before COVID. It was called COVID-19 because it hit in 2019. So COVID's an easy thing to blame. It didn't help. But at this point, we can't blame COVID anymore for the fact that our stress hormones, our fear of rejection, our fear of embarrassment is overpowering our need to connect and belong. And the way you get those oxytocin hits that you can completely control all on your own, performing acts of kindness. And immediately some of you may be getting this stress response. No, I'm not going to be taken advantage of. Here's the thing. If you do a nice thing for someone, purely because you want to do a nice thing, not out of a sense of obligation, not out of a sense of expectation, just I'm going to do a nice thing just because it's nice. And that's it. That's where we leave it. No one can use that against you. That is phenomenal cosmic power, to quote Aladdin. Phenomenal cosmic power. Itty bitty living space. And the itty bitty living space part doesn't have to happen. Too many people get caught in a kindness trap that they are not doing, centered, strong acts of kindness with healthy boundaries as well. They are actually people pleasing. And when you people please, you give away your power, right? If you do a nice thing because it's a nice thing and you're not expecting anything in return, and somebody's an absolute jerk about it, that's feedback, right? You're like, all right, I'm going to invest less time in that person. Oh, you can't do that. Yes, you can. Like I said, better mental health is simple. It's just not easy because we have been trained again and again and again in things that may benefit the community or the family, but there's no consideration to how it benefits you as part of that community and part of that family. And this is not balanced, right? Makes sense. You're not just thinking about yourself. You are also thinking about yourself. And doing a nice thing just to do a nice thing, let me tell you, it does work. I used to go into that internet game of rah, because it's infectious, right? You go on social media and saying that strong thing, that making a stand, right? It's usually criticizing or attacking somebody who's different than you, right? And it's a rush. It's an adrenaline rush. But again, adrenaline's a stress hormone, right? The feel-good part, well, we haven't talked about endorphins yet, but that can often come with it. But when people start dogpiling you instead of you being the one on the attack, well, that doesn't generate those endorphins, right? It's just all adrenaline and cortisol and all that stress. The reason the whole internet social media thing, we're going to take a stand. The reason it feels good is the likes, right? Likes are a reward. You get that little dopamine hit when you put a thing expecting to get likes, right? It's like, oh, this is going to be so good, right? And if you don't get as many likes as you expected, you're disappointed. But it's also the fact that it is relatively easy online to find people who agree with you if you say something negative about a common enemy. But this is a race to the bottom. It is cruel. Instead, focus on the things that can form real, lasting bonds, not at the expense of a third party. Just do it because it's nice. Like the Superman movie, him saving the squirrel, right? I still love that scene because that is just kindness for the sake of kindness. No one would have, said anything untoward about him if he let a squirrel get crushed by a kaiju. He did it just to be kind. And we know that centered acts of kindness combined with healthy boundaries, improves mental health outcomes, as well as diet, as well as exercise, as well as getting enough sleep and getting enough sunlight. I am a ginger. If I can manage the vitamin D, everybody can. That is a constant balancing act for me. And because of the whole love hormone angle of oxytocin and our society's, it's not even romantic love anymore most of the time. It's hookups. It's these really toxic relationships with hot people. And it's not really about a genuine bond or even a real attraction to the other person. It is that quick endorphin fix, because that release that comes through physical sex when there's no love involved. Yeah, you get that endorphin rush, that natural kind of painkiller feeling. But you can get the same endorphin rush from laughing with somebody without any of the negative social consequences, risk of disease, or general awkwardness after sleeping with somebody you shouldn't. And the fact that it's become so normalized that these one-night hookups are a thing among college students that they put it in King of the Hill. No joke, the new King of the Hill has Bobby hooking up with this college student, and they don't talk about what it means beforehand. They do the deed. I know this is so weird in a King of the Hill cartoon, but they do the deed, and afterwards she says, this was a one-time thing, That is not proper consent. If it's going to be a one-time thing, you have to let the person know in advance so they're consenting with all the information. But, hey, heaven forbid the person might say no because they don't do one-time things. So you wait and you tell them afterwards. That's not okay. These habits that are normal but unhealthy, that really impact young people more than the rest of the general population, because college students, their brains are on the back end of still forming, but those brains are still forming. And when they're, that's a deception by omission is what it is. Because, she wanted the easy sex for a night for the endorphin rush. But when you're doing that to people, you're giving up the bonds of, society, the way it's supposed to work when it's ideal. Now, that doesn't mean you have to love everyone you sleep with, but finding other ways to get that endorphin hit and other ways to get that sense of belonging in the long term is much better happy math. And again, if you want to go out and just, have a hookup to say you did it, that's cool, right? In the long term, however, that low-key deceptive behavior of not telling someone anything before they do something that they may say no to if they had all the information, that is not going to make you many friends. And that's where we get into the I'm not here to make friends element of, younger people, of Gen Z. And I think the alphas are sort of out of it, but younger millennials, Gen Z, they were the generations of I'm not here to make friends, because every colleague, every other student is a competitor. That is just so unhealthy, because one of the things that public school teaches you is how to make friends, those social bonds, how to be kind, how to be pro-social, while still learning what your boundaries are and maintaining them. So I'm going to go to break again, and I'm going to come back and talk about gratitude and kindness, how to do them from a place of power instead of a way that's going to get you taken advantage of. But I got to pause for another break. Questions, comments, concerns, Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website, at nottherapyshow on social media. When we come back, better mental health. It's simple, even if it's not easy, on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We're still talking better mental health. It's simple, even though it's not easy. And the reason it's not easy is because it's a balance. It's what I talk about, happy math, right? That thing that is an instant endorphin rush that may not be the best moral choice in the short term because it's not the best moral choice or even the best tactical choice. It's a sugar rush instead of something that's going to give you emotional fuel for a longer term and have better outcomes, not even long term, medium term. Or, even the next day when you're not regretting what you did again. This is stuff that, God, we glorify it on TV. The Sex and the City thing, what was it called? And Just Like That. It's interesting to see how the audience aging has given them a different perspective of the stuff that I saw when that show ran the first time. And I love that, again, Second Golden Girls mentioned this show in the articles. They're like, well, we still have the Golden Girls for a story about, a bunch of female friends. And I never saw the Sex and the City women. Yes, they were friends, but it was sort of a friends situationship. I didn't feel the bonds that, and this could just be me relating to a bunch of women in their 50s when I was a teenager. I was an old soul. But the thing that was interesting about the Golden Girls is they could fight and they had flaws. Rose seemed like just a sweet lady, but she was super competitive and that caused problems, right? Blanche's hypersexuality did cause problems from time to time. They weren't perfect women, but they worked through it. They got angry at each other, really angry, but they had the social skills to make it through. And maintaining friendships, again, is actually more simple than people give it credit for. It's just not easy because at the end of the day, at difficult times, you have to ask yourself, do I want to stay friends with this person? Is what the person brings to my life more important than this temporary hurt? And it takes some maturity to say yes and say no. But here's the thing, the simple but not easy thing is that both answers have to be allowable for either one of them to stand. And by that, I mean, you have to be prepared to say, no, I don't want to be friends anymore. To have, yes, I want to stay friends, be something you enter into with gratitude, right? With kindness, instead of a sense of obligation. And you will notice that the ongoing theme of this show is owning your choices and focusing on what you want instead of couching it in I have to because you're afraid of wanting things because it's selfish. But gratitude is about focusing on the things in life that are meaningful or value to you, that you appreciate, no matter how small. And if you don't know what you want, if you don't know where you're going, if everything is just I have to, it's very difficult to be grateful for anything. If you feel like I have to talk to that person, you're not going to be able to focus on that good chat you had with a friend, right? If, I hate people, I need to be around people, but I can't wait to get to my house, you may miss that little act of kindness from a stranger opening a door for you or giving you change for those supermarkets. Still have those things where you have to put in a quarter. Sometimes it's $1, right? You miss those things if you're just constantly obligated, right? This matters. And this is a mindset shift. No matter how good your life is. If you feel like, you see a lot of these tech bros, these .com millionaires, where I work right all the time. Like, sure, Elon Musk, you are not playing Path of Exiles 2 when you were at work. By not playing, that was a joke because, it came out that somebody was actually playing the game for him so he could seem better at it than he was. And how sad is that? That he had to pretend to be good at video games when he's the richest man in the world. Because everything with him is a competition. Everything is, I have to show I'm better than everyone else. Instead of just being, you know what? I have different skills. I'm not better. But, deep down, a lot of these guys think money should make them better. And then they have a ketamine-fueled crisis when it doesn't, right? And no slight to ketamine. It's helped people. I know people it's helped. But please follow those treatment protocols as the way they're supposed to be done. Really understand what you're getting into with these programs before that you sign up, and ask about who these programs are not good for, including if you have a history of substance misuse or addiction. Rest in peace, Matthew Perry. Gratitude is something that we are actively dissuaded from, because we're encouraged by society to improve instead of be happy for what we have. The thing about gratitude is it overcomes that negativity bias that many of us have that's designed to, again, keep us safe, stay in the cave where it's safe. All these bad things could happen, stay in the cave. But we don't thrive until we step out of the cave and start taking some healthy risks. So, say you hate Mondays, right? Look forward to the weekend, okay? You'll get through the week. I do this on very busy weeks a lot. You'll get through the week. The goal for the week is just to get through it, and then you're planning to do something fun on the weekend. Right now, my solace is Death Stranding 2. Oh my God, I love that game so much. So no matter how bad the day is, okay, let's play a little bit of Death Stranding 2. Just, look forward to the good instead of being laser focused on the bad. Because again, anticipating the good times, anticipation reward, that's dopamine. Reaching out to friends to talk, that's oxytocin, see? Now, gratitude is hand in hand with kindness, right? And I talked about kindness before the break. But a lot of people struggle with gratitude because they overextend themselves trying to be a nice person. And the reason they're so bitter, the reason they can't be grateful, is that kindness wasn't really kindness. It was kind of a manipulation. I'm going to do something nice for them, so they'll do something nice for me, right? It's all scorekeeping. And the minute you start keeping score, kindness is not going to work with the oxytocin boost, because you end up focusing on what other people didn't do for you instead of appreciating the things that they did. If you want someone to do something for you, don't hint, ask, or at least make it clear what your goals are, where you're trying to get to. If you don't communicate that, people can't know. Do not expect people to read your mind, right? That's why I say listen twice before you talk once, the top 10 phrase, instead of anticipate twice before you talk once. No, don't do that. But also don't go out of your way. Don't be the person who spends way too much at the holidays. People who truly care about you do not want you to go into debt with gifts. And yes, you may really want to make the person happy, But there are other ways that are less expensive because that person might not be an expensive gift person. Thoughtful gifts, great. Expensive gifts, I know gifts are some people's love languages, right? They're their love style, but you shouldn't be, harming yourself financially to people please through purchases. Wow, that was a tough one to say. People please through purchases. There we are. Enunciation. So, yes, we sometimes do nice things for people. And then the minute it's time for them to do something nice for you, that's it. I've had it happen to me fairly recently that I really stuck my neck out for somebody. And the minute I said, hey, whoa, time out, this is a violation of the conditions of me sticking my neck out for you. Like, let's watch this because I never personally saw you do this thing other people have accused you of before. Now this is getting into that territory. So let's stop that so I can continue to defend you. They accused me of threatening them. I said, okay, if the claim that I've threatened you isn't taken off the table, because it's not true, this isn't going to go well. And I never heard from them again. And that's fine, right? It is. That was a relatively low pain way of finding out that person was probably not worth me sticking their neck out for. And yeah, that's a value judgment. We're allowed to make them. People are allowed to make them about us. And if we focus on the terror of being negatively judged, especially unfairly negatively judged, we're taking time, we're taking focus, we're taking attention away from being grateful to the people who do have our backs, who do stand up for us, who do respect boundaries, who do appreciate we stand up for them and don't just respond with criticism or more reckless behavior, right? Right. So I want to talk about boundaries when we come back, combined with compassion, because these are other things. They're simple. We all know deep down how to do them, but social training disconnects us from the knowledge of these things. They are learned skills, don't get me wrong. It does take some time to get better at them. But because we have those stress hormones and happy hormones, these feedback indicators that are there for a reason, but we're trained by society to ignore them, we make it harder than it has to be. Questions, comments, concerns, Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is the website, at nottherapyshow on social media. Better mental health. It's simple, even if it's not easy on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kirsner. I'm still not a therapist. I'm still talking better mental health. It's simple, even though it might not be easy. And this is our last segment. So I'm going to try to talk about two things, or just give you some touch points, because I talked about boundaries all show. But healthy boundaries start with compassion, both for ourselves and others. Top 10 phrase, self-esteem cannot exist without self-compassion. If you have no boundaries about how you are beating the crap out of yourself, you are not going to have positive mental health. And yet so many people, and apparently it's rooted a lot of the times in disappointing their parents. They beat the snot out of themselves because they've been taught that success is about innate characteristics instead of effort. And, you can't control the biological hand you were dealt. Good Lord, I was dealt a lousy one. Dealt, yeah. I was dealt a lousy biological hand. I have a lot of, predispositions to things. But I can't control that. What I can control is the effort I put in and just trying to be better today than I was yesterday. Trying to learn and grow. But if one of the things that I used to do, and it just drove me into the ditch mental health wise, is overly focus on criticism, overly focus on my weaknesses, to the point that I was constantly trying to improve, but I was never focusing on what I was good at as a guide path for that improvement. So I was just going around in circles, not making the same mistakes, but not actually getting anywhere, because I was constantly overcorrecting and not, I was correcting away from the things I was actually good at. So things were getting worse instead of better. And I do have a lot of compassion. I do have a lot of understanding. But because people were intentionally or unintentionally using that against me and hitting me with the, "You're so selfish," every time I tried to stand up for myself or set a boundary, my self-image was really messed up. And often those of us who are compassionate to other people, we are not compassionate with ourselves. And that doesn't work. This is a simple but not easy change you can make for significantly better mental health, because compassion is using your empathy to act, to alleviate suffering. It's not just feeling bad when other people are feeling bad. No, it's knowing what to do about, if not the other person's bad feelings. Some people just have to be allowed to feel bad for a while, right? Sometimes I just have to be allowed to feel bad for a while. But if I don't know what to do when I'm feeling bad so that I can feel good again, getting back to good takes a lot longer, right? And one of the things that highly compassionate people do, whenever somebody says, "I'm an empath," I know that that person is taking way too much of other people's stuff and taking it on themselves and making it theirs, and it's not. Top 10 phrase: you are the hero of your own story, not anyone else's. You cannot solve another person's bad feelings. The Lord of the Rings, you can't carry it for them. You can carry them, but you can't carry their burdens for them. If your friend was feeling embarrassed or down or like they'd made a huge mistake, would you call them stupid? Well, some people would. Okay, at least you're consistent. But most people wouldn't, right? Most people, like, everybody makes mistakes. It's okay. You'll get it next time. So why are you talking to yourself any differently, right? We don't think that negative self-talk, that too much, not enough messaging, you're too sensitive, instead of just, you're sensitive, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing, right? We don't think about negative self-talk being a lack of internal boundaries, but it very much is. No one is ever going to be smart, pretty, confident, strong enough for their biggest critics, right? Stop trying to be perfect. Perfect is a lie. Enough isn't perfect. If your standard is perfection, you are going to fail 99 times out of 100. A big part of peer counseling, which is what I do when I'm not on the radio, is modeling how to handle difficult feelings. When I coach a creative person, especially, right? They tend to have very big feelings because it's how they're able to create art. And breakthroughs come when you can accept that someone is unhappy, even unhappy with you, without assuming blame or shame for it. Recognizing you contributed to it is not the same as feeling like you did something inherently bad because someone is feeling bad. And often what people end up doing is they feel so bad, they feel so guilty that someone is upset with them, that they deflect and project that blame onto the other person. "Oh, well, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this." And I hear I'm defending myself from people who did that. And it's like, but that's not what it looks like from the outside. What it looks like from the outside is you just dumped on a person who was already feeling bad because you don't have enough self-compassion. You got into a war with yourself. and the actual other person in the room with you was collateral damage. And that's why boundaries are so important, and boundaries were something fundamental. They are so simple, but they are so hard because you have to change the way you think about everything. You have to be prepared to upset people. That's why I say, it's coming, top 10 phrase. Other people don't have to like your boundaries, but they do have to respect them. That's important. We have physical, emotional, mental, time, and material boundaries. They are yours. They are not your limits. They are not how much you can take. Set boundaries below your limits so you can be flexible with them. If you've got somebody who tends to be hard to step away from and you're going to be late, this is something I have to try all the time. Start wrapping them before, 15 minutes before. If you're like me, you're like, okay, I'm going to wrap 15 minutes before, and they'll take you 30. But at least you're only 15 minutes late for your next thing and not 30, right? Sometimes it's hard to assess, but see, setting that boundary there meant you can still be a bit flexible, but only be 15 minutes late for something instead of a half hour late. Sometimes that's all we can do, right? Material boundaries are another thing. They're not our limits. They're not the bare minimum. They're not the absolute maximum. Think about them as a fence around your emotional house. Somebody can come through the fence and come to our front door. Yeah, okay, there's some flexibility, or technically it's trespassing. We can ask them to leave. It is your property, but it's much safer than letting them in your emotional house. That is how boundaries work. And knowing and respecting your own boundaries makes positive self-talk much easier. Set a boundary with yourself against beating yourself up in your self-talk. There are better ways, right? Celebrate wins. Accept mistakes, not blame. Losing doesn't mean we're a loser. Failing doesn't mean we're a failure. Everybody fails sometimes. Everybody loses sometimes. Learning how to fail, learning how to lose are skills we used to learn before the days of requiring utter academic perfection, because we put in kids' heads that if they fail a single test, it's going to ruin their college career and therefore their career, and we gotta stop doing it. I believe in education reform so that failure is part of the process, and that we can fail and learn without it affecting final marks. But, I'm not in charge. I'm also not in charge of the time, so I'll just leave you with this. Boundaries don't just help you. They boost respect and trust in your relationships. They're more stable, they're more predictable. It's easy to know where you're coming from because you set those boundaries in advance. People know how to win with you instead of just losing. So questions, comments, concerns, Liana at nottherapyshow.com, nottherapyshow.com, Not Therapy Show on social media. Thanks for listening to this show. Thanks again to finding a way for a great event on the weekend. And you're crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you. Talk next time.